Welcome back to MMA Al Dente, the only MMA YouTube channel that predicted that AJ Dobson would defeat Armen Petrosyan. He's training with Mark Coleman. Trust me, he's gonna wrestle. Alright, speaking of shit I got wrong, I'm gonna talk about UFC 280 here. Amazing event, and I'm gonna start at the top. Turns out Islam Makhachev is the greatest lightweight in the world. Maybe the greatest fighter in the world. He kicked Charles's ass. It looked really good doing it. Islam won the wrestling battle, the striking battle, and the grappling battle. And he submitted Charles in round 2. Charles has been submitted 3 other times, of course, but Islam submitted this version of Charles Oliveira, the lightweight champ who's taken out every top fighter in the division. And man, talk about separating yourself. Islam Makhachev did that. He even made good on his promise to drop Charles and follow him, which is what he did, and finish him, which is what he did, I don't know, seconds later, it seemed like. So, just an overall eye-opening victory, even though Islam was the favorite in this fight and, clearly expected to win. I thought he overperformed, or really performed very well, and made a statement. That was a thorough ass kicking. I thought Charles Oliveira, I predicted Charles to win. I thought Charles needed to get going early and overwhelm Islam, and that's what I thought would happen. And of course, he was trying to do that. Charles Oliveira is always on his way to doing that until things go wrong with a punch to the face. And Islam Makhachev put him in his place. Islam's got really good counter hooks. I don't want to make it like Islam would win a kickboxing match, but I think Islam can hang on his feet with anybody in MMA. And of course, half his striking is his wrestling. You know how that goes. But he is that always going to have people second guessing themselves because he's so dominant as a grappler. And the guy, clearly hits hard. So, Islam Makhachev coming into his own, I thought he really delivered on his feet in this fight. His striking came through for him in a big way. And, of course, so did his submission game. That arm triangle, he just locked it up almost immediately, I feel like, once they hit the ground in the second round there for, the second time. But Islam, his wrestling as well. Takedowns from the clinch. And when you can't take someone down, you knock them down. Just an awesome performance from Islam Makhachev. And, of course, now his, next fight is booked against Volkanovski, which will be in Perth, Australia, I believe. And that's going to be an awesome fight. I can't say I'm as excited for it as I would have been for Charles versus Volkanovski, but I have to look into it more, believe me, I'll find a way to get excited for that fight in a mega way. But after that, assuming he wins, because it is going to be for his title, Islam Makhachev would have to fight Beneil Dariush, who earned a title fight last night, in my opinion. And then after that, it's going to be those European guys, the Kutadaladzes and Ismagulovs and this one and that one. And Islam's going to have a tough road ahead of him. But I think between he and Charles, he's the guy that's going to be the king, the guy that's going to have a long era, a reign. And Charles already had his time at the top. He had a pretty damn good run. But Islam Makhachev is the guy that I could see a dominant reign from. Like I said, he's Khabib with long-term plans. So, awesome performance from Islam Makhachev. Really rough performance from Charles Oliveira. He's a guy who has been defeated, 9 times? He's been finished in 8. Like I said, in any time I talk about Charles, I do think the breakability is still there. I think that's what I said in the Gaethje fight. Did I pick Gaethje? I don't even remember. But Charles, anytime he is defeated, he will be finished, I think. That's just how he is. But still, the offense is still there. And that's enough to make him one of my favorite fighters. And you know what? Even though I think if they were to rematch under any circumstances, Charles would be a significant underdog. Islam would be a 5-1 favorite probably with the way he performed against Charles last night. But Charles is still not that far away from a title shot. He's 1 win, 2 wins, who knows? Or, I don't know. It depends on what Conor McGregor wants, I guess. But, not bad for a main event. Didn't go the way I wanted it to betting-wise. But it was still cool to see Islam have his crowning moment with Khabib and the whole gang and whatever, and Khamzat Chimaev outside starting fights with his family, Khabib's family. But anyway, let's move on to the next fight, which was Aljamain Sterling taking out TJ Dillashaw. You know, you gotta love hearing about this shit in the middle of the fight. You know, the commentator's like, yeah, by the way, his shoulder's been fucked up for like 2.5 months, 2.5 years or something, in and out. It's just really fucked up. Yeah, I told my brother to bet $2 billion on Aljamain Sterling, but yeah, his shoulder's fucked up. We're telling you now. Anyway, you gotta wonder how that works. I know they're not allowed to bet. Yeah, sure. But anyway, Aljamain Sterling, just speaking of dominant performances, kicking ass and getting a second round finish, this was pretty much it for Aljo. I do think there is a little bit of an asterisk because it was verified that TJ had a shoulder injury, but I don't know. Just kind of seemed like, you know, TJ put a little too much weight, no pun intended, on that shoulder injury. Maybe he had it in his head. Things don't go my way, I've got a spin. But whatever. He stepped in the cage. All things are equal once you step in the cage because you made the decision to do so. And Aljamain Sterling was just too much for him. Great ground and pound, great control. You know, his submissions are always there for him, but he couldn't lock anything up on TJ. TJ's never been submitted, and that's a guy who started off with years and years rolling around with Uriah Faber, Benavidez, Mendez. He's probably a really tough guy to choke. So, just a really tough, difficult matchup fighting Aljamain Sterling. He couldn't get out. Aljo had too much control and decided to go the other way and pounded him out. It was a really rough loss for TJ and great win for Aljamain Sterling. Again, people will dismiss it with the injury and whatever. I kind of just did myself, but still, you know, under any circumstances, Aljamain Sterling is a big favorite in any sort of rematch. I think he did separate himself from TJ in that fight and the rest of the division with what happened with O'Malley and Yan. But great win for Aljamain Sterling. Really great win. You know, TJ Dillashaw is, despite the asterisks and the horseshit, he is a two-time champion, an all-time legend, EPO, whatever the fuck. I don't know what that qualifies and disqualifies him for or whatever. But, you know, without that, I'd say he's a Hall of Fame fighter, guaranteed. And a big feather in Aljo's cap. And now he's sitting atop the division, and this is, you know, he's got that one rival, Petr Yan, and a half hour before Aljo's fight, Yan was defeated by Sean O'Malley. So, Aljamain Sterling really riding high, and in this night really separated himself from the division. Of course, O'Malley stepped over Yan, and now it's probably O'Malley versus Aljo, but still, things took a great turn for Aljo last night, and I make it sound like it's pure luck. He kicked ass. He is a big problem when he gets on top. I was worried for TJ's sake about Aljo getting on top, and once he did, which I forget how he even got on top at first, kind of like a crash takedown or whatever, but then he legitimately took him down in round 2, and you could tell if the fight went on, it was only going to get more easy. So, I don't know why I avoid saying the word easier. But great win for Aljamain Sterling. Tough loss for TJ Dillashaw. I do say that's it for him at the title level. You know, 36 years old. And when people speculate about, you know, age, like I do in the pre-fight videos, not to be whatever, but that's a part of it. The shoulder injury and whatever. When a guy's 36 or 40 or 44, Alexei Oleinik or whatever, their age is a factor because bodies break down more easily as you get to 40 from 30. And that's just the reality of it. Now, TJ from here, I don't know how long his rehab takes and whatever, till he's 100%. And it's just, if this is how it went at 36, I don't envision him being at the top ever again. So, in that sense, you know, professionally, I think he's reached his top. Not that I think he's done fighting, but Aljamain Sterling keeps soaring. All right, as for who he fights next, let's get to the next fight. Sean O'Malley with the most controversial, I want to say, decision of the year. Look, as you know, I predicted O'Malley, if you watch his videos and whatever. And I bet on O'Malley to win via decision, and it really worked out for me, but it was wrong. I thought Yan narrowly edged all rounds, really. I did think it was close, where, all right, there's a chance maybe one judge is an idiot and gives it to O'Malley, but I didn't think two. You know, O'Malley was just outmatched here. He was outmatched. He did well from the distance. He does have great hands and a lot of pop in his punches, but Jan was crowding him. Jan was crowding him from the beginning, had him on his back foot, which is what I thought Jan needed to do. And Jan started wrestling early. I think the 2.5 minute mark of round one started wrestling, and he was very effective with his wrestling against Sean O'Malley. You know, Jan is not whoever, Merab Dvalishvili, but he's a very well-rounded fighter, more well-rounded than O'Malley, and I thought he worked a really good, solid performance. Even on the feet, you know, they were back and forth. They were both getting tagged, but Jan was more consistent, I thought. And even in that moment that O'Malley had where he cracked Jan with a big left hand, I think, Jan just came back and cracked him with a bigger hand. I thought, oh, wow, that's a statement. You know, you talk about taking momentum in such a visible way. But O'Malley, look, he was in that fight. The guy is tough. Like I said in the video, I don't like him. I totally respect him, though. You know, it's just tough to get behind the rainbows and the eye tattoo or whatever. But anyway, O'Malley is a bona fide fighter. He's a dog, as you hear the other fighters say. And he just had a tooth and nail battle with Petr Yan. And I do think if Yan got the decision that I thought he should have gotten, which, by the way, MMADecisions.com. That's where you want to go to reflect on any decision. It's not infallible. It's not the truth. It's not something, but it is the best way to judge a decision. It is an aggregate of all the different media outlets and their scorecards with their men scoring the fights. And these guys care about the sport. They know the sport, and apparently they're watching intently, even though they got to write shit down, so maybe it's not that intently, but still, it's a good way to judge a fight. And they had it a shutout for Petr Yan. I didn't count how many judges it was, but it's in the 20s, 20-something to 0. Not one judge or one media outlet scored the fight for Sean O'Malley. So that's a robbery, in my opinion. I use that, and I say, all right, that's a robbery. But look, O'Malley didn't stop fighting. And like the point I was going to make a minute ago is if Petr Yan had won the fight, then we'd be talking about how Sean O'Malley had this great moral victory. He showed he can hang with the best. Yeah, but I'm telling you, look, pretend he drops him, has one moment or whatever, he wins that fight. Yeah, Sean O'Malley absolutely performed very well. But now the story is there was a robbery. That's how I feel about it anyway. But look, the robbery went my way. So I'm happy Sean O'Malley won. I thought he performed very well. I thought he didn't stop fighting. When he was taken down, he didn't stop wrestling. And his anti-wrestling was still there for him, too. Of course, like I said, he was taken down a bunch, but he was not taken down a bunch, too. And Petr Yan is a tank. He's really tough to hurt and really tough to slow down. That's why he typically starts slow, is because he just he doesn't slow down. He only gains momentum as the fight goes on. And O'Malley was there for him tooth and nail the whole way. In the end, I thought it was a really close fight, but with a clear winner. And now the story is, I think there was a robbery. But look, from here, Sean O'Malley, he moves on. He fights, I think he fights Aljamain Sterling. He did seem a little reluctant to commit to, give me the title fight. I think he's, still a little shaken from that fight. Like he thought, he was humble about it. He said, yeah, Jan, whatever, I got to rewatch it. I think he knew Jan probably, or he felt Jan got the better of him, and with the booze and whatever, I'm sure it occurred to him. But he didn't seem in such a rush to fight Aljo, which is interesting, because now Aljo, I don't know who he's going to fight, but it's not going to be Merab Dvalishvili. So, but still, regardless of whether we got a title contender or whatever, Jan is now out of the title picture, I'd say. I can't even commit to that, because I think, we've seen it in the past with Jose Aldo fighting Marlon Moraes. And that was a really tight decision. Not a bad decision like this one, but a tight decision. And Aldo got the title fight off of that. So Jan maybe isn't totally out of the realm. He's clearly a guy that could be 4-0 in his last 4, and instead he's 1-3. But, that is bad luck. I'll say he's a very unlucky fighter at this point in his career. But again, his stock didn't drop too low because everybody saw a guy that, even though he was defeated on paper, he definitely wasn't outclassed in any way. All right, next up was Beneil Dariush. Speaking of title contenders, Beneil Dariush took out Mateusz Gamrot. Really good performance, from Beneil Dariush. I thought his cardio held up. I remember saying, yeah, Gamrot's going to win round 3. Beneil Dariush just looked awesome for 3 rounds. Really good anti-wrestling. Really good anti-wrestling. Because Gamrot's a problem. I don't even think Gamrot's got, like, the best overall takedown once he gets in on you. But he's so fast and athletic. He's got to have one of the best shots overall. Actually getting in on your hips. And Beneil Dariush was just better the whole way, and it wasn't just a battle of the takedown, but also the striking too. Dariush, his striking is awesome. I've talked about his chin, maybe not having the most faith in it, but when his chin holds up, he can hang with anybody on the feet, and he is the more powerful puncher in this fight and in most fights. The guy is really a deceptively powerful puncher, got a left hand from hell. I just thought Dariush looked great in this fight. He did, I think it was a 3rd round where he dropped Gamrot, and Gamrot just spun around, came right back in on a shot. And, Gamrot's awesome. He's still one of my favorite fighters, even though I think he's like a, kind of like a lightweight Merab. But Merab's one of my favorite fighters. These guys may not produce the most finishes in their UFC careers, but you got to respect a workhorse. I just sit there imagining how hard these guys work to fight that hard for 15 minutes. But look, I don't want to just put over Gamrot here. This is Beneil Dariush's moment, and he's my favorite fighter in the division, or, he was my favorite fighter on this card. So I was really looking for Beneil to win. I'm glad he won a decision. I shouldn't say I'm glad he won a decision. I would rather he got the finish. But still, it was good to see him outwork Gamrot. Gamrot's a guy coming off that big 5-round war against Arman Tsarukyan. And Gamrot just got that reputation, like I said in the pre-fight interview, of being the biggest workhorse. And I'm not saying he wouldn't have outworked Beneil if the fight had unlimited rounds or whatever. Gamrot is that guy. But this fight was 15 minutes, and Beneil Dariush separated himself. He was clearly better than Mateusz Gamrot. Really just such a well-versed fighter. And I think he definitely earned the title shot here. Yeah, I thought he could have earned one before this, but now, it sucks for him because Volkanovski is getting the next shot. It's guaranteed. That's in February or whatever. And Beneil, I don't know what his plans are. If I was him, I would sit out. Sit out for a year. You've earned the title fight. And just don't do anything but fight for the title, no matter what. Although there's a financial situation for him and his family that I'm not considering clearly. But still, as a fan of his, I just want to see him take a title fight. No, one more fight. It's too dangerous. And Gamrot from here, look, he's 4-2 or something in the UFC now. He's got those 2 losses, but the losses are both really close losses. This one maybe wasn't so close, but Gamrot's in every fight. He's never been dominated, and I still see his ceiling being a title fight. Whether he wins or not, I think he's going to reach that fight. And Beneil Dariush has already reached that fight, in my opinion. It better be his next fight. All right, next up, Manon Fiorot takes out Katlyn Chookagian. This was a close fight, but I thought Manon was, I thought she won all 3 rounds, maybe, I think. And won the wrestling battle, too. Manon is a damn strong girl, and she was just better than Katlyn. Katlyn was hanging with her, with her counter-striking, and, was only in the realm of hanging with her because she's got such a difficult body. She's 5'9" there. It's a difficult task to fight someone that long and tall. And she did fight like Semi Schultz, but she was outpointed. Manon Fiorot is that damn good. We haven't seen anybody really distinctly beat Katlyn Chookagian via decision, aside from Liz Carmouche in like her first or second fight, and even that one was razor thin. And then the Jessica Eye fight was very close, but this one, while, again, every round was interesting, it wasn't a shutout or whatever, but Manon clearly got the better of her. And that's a big feather in her cap. Would have been cool for her to get the finish. I know she's gunning for it. And like I said, she is one of the best finishers in the division. And she's got finishes ahead of her, no doubt about it. But this fight here, she outpointed the greatest point fighter, who was 15-2 in decisions. Now she's 15-3. That's a big feather in Manon Fiore's cap. And from here, she's got that title fight with Valentina. Depending on what the UFC does, I still don't know what their plans are for Valentina. Valentina might insist on moving up, or they might want her to fight Taila Santos, or she could be fighting Manon Fiore. But Manon Fiore has absolutely put herself in the realm of fighting for her title, where if they said today, okay, the fight is booked Valentina versus Manon Fiore versus whatever. She can have any fight she wants, is my point, after defeating Katlyn Chookagian. So, big victory for her. I'm really happy to see her win, even though I picked Chookagian and I bet on Chookagian. Like I said, I was rooting for Manon, I guess you could say I got a thing for her. But great performance. And I feel like maybe every winner of the main card is going to fight for a title next. Of course, the top two are champions, so that's a given. But really awesome. And speaking of fighting for a title, that brings me to the main event of the prelims, which Belal Muhammad beat Sean Brady. I don't know. I don't know if he fights for a title now with that fucking situation at welterweight, but much like Manon Fiore and Sean O'Malley and Beneil Dariush, his next fight could be for a title, and you wouldn't hear anybody complain about it. Belal Muhammad, I don't know his winning streak now. Call it 10. I think it's 9 or 8 or whatever. I don't know. But he's looked fucking awesome. Had that one fight with Leon Edwards, of course, which I suppose only makes a title fight more enticing. The one no contest. But Belal Muhammad got a big victory here. A rare finish for him. Remember the decision, all this shit. People mock him because he is one of the more boring fighters in the division. It is what it is, but he's still an awesome fighter. And, his hands came through for him big time here. He was able to get Sean Brady tired, out of his element. Brady was going tooth and nail with a striking battle. I did think the first round was very close, and the second round too. But then just Belal Muhammad clipped him with a minute left in round 2, I want to say. It was near the end of round 2, and that's a long time fighting, especially fighting deep into a round, the 4th and 5th minutes. Those are where a guy who's going to get exhausted will get exhausted. And not that I'm saying that's what happened with Brady, but it is like I speculated in the beginning. I can't say I don't trust his cardio, but he looks like a guy that you might not trust his cardio. And it's one thing when you're on top and you're fighting your fight, but when you're not fighting your fight and you're forced to stand and you can't get a takedown on this guy, and he is a better striker, it's going to overwhelm you. I thought Brady had the heavier hands, but that was it. Belal Muhammad is sharp, slow, and steady, and he's damn tough too, despite being the only one of the two of them that was knocked out. To Vicente Luque, I'll forgive him. But Muhammad got a gigantic victory here. Just awesome seeing what many great welterweights already at this point have tried to do and failed. Michael Chiesa, Jake Matthews, Court McGee. All right, I know I used the word great and it's starting to taper off there, but no offense to Court. I love Court McGee. But still, this was a gigantic fight between two top-ranked guys, and Belal Muhammad emerged. Belal Muhammad schooled the youngster, tamed him, and got one of his only finishes, and maybe put together his best performance in the UFC here, and that's coming off of that performance against Luque. So Belal Muhammad has a lot of momentum, and with a gigantic win like that, especially getting the finish, he gets what he wants. I think he said Khamzat or Leon Edwards. That's probably because he knows, there's something going on with Kamaru or whatever. But, either way, his next fight is probably a main event. Might be a main event of a fucking pay-per-view for all I know. But really big win for Belal Muhammad. Cool to see him level up even at this point. And Sean Brady from here, like I said coming into the fight, he's not a wrestler. He's one of the best wrestlers in the division, but he's not a wrestler. I don't think he's ever stepped on a mat, shook someone's hands, and wrestled, put his head into someone else's head. He's never done that. but and his wrestling wasn't here for him against a more technical wrestler, Bilal Muhammad. But still, Sean Brady, you know, it's worked for him. His wrestling and his grappling and whatever, his non-existent wrestling and his grappling and his hands have all put together a nice package that's helped him defeat Michael Chiesa and Jake Matthews and Court McGee and whoever in his first few fights. So his ceiling is still championship. Don't get me wrong. Absolutely still championship. It's just now there's concerns going forward with maybe cardio, his striking overall holding up, and maybe a little bit with his chin. But it's not over yet. Caio Borralho, I say it like 7 different ways. Caio Borralho took out, what's his face there? Makhmud Muradov. That was not quite as dominant as we've seen him, but still a great win for Caio Borralho. He's now 3-0 in the UFC, 5-0, including his Contender Series fights. Not that those count on his UFC record or should or whatever, but my point is he's got a lot of momentum. It's just now he's got 6 decisions in his 13 victories, and they're in 7 of his last fights. So, again, things are trending one way, and that's towards him being a decision fighter. Muradov's been submitted 4 times, was submitted in his last fight, and Borralho, on paper, I thought, okay, if he does, he's got what it takes to submit Muradov, especially with top control if he's there. And if he doesn't, it's clear things are trending one way. This guy's a decision fighter. Not that I'm trying to shit on him. That's just something we know about him. It's more reliable that we can count on to bet moving forward. But still, great performance from Borralho. I thought he outworked Muradov, who was still a game in this fight. This wasn't, lopsided by any means. But just overall, he's much better with control and takedowns, and Muradov just isn't. I feel like he's developed into more of a pure striker, kind of like I was speculating on with AJ Dobson, who, whatever, had the wrestling and whatever, but he's trending one way, and it's towards Chuck Liddell. And, Chuck Liddell was a wrestler first and foremost, and then to beat him, you had to take him down. And Muradov is... he's a striker here, and he was fighting a wrestler, a pure grappler, Caio Borralho, and it just didn't go his way. So, stylistically, a dangerous matchup, and Borralho made good on it. 2-1 favorite, but he looked it. All right, next up, Nikita Krylov taking out Volkan Oezdemir. This was a wild fight for like a minute or two, and then I thought Krylov pretty much took over, slowed the fight down with effective wrestling. And it went about how I expected it to go. It was cool to see Oezdemir go for it early, and he was rocking Krylov, rocking him. He tagged him a bunch, but Krylov's never been knocked out. Like I said in the pre-fight, that one TKO loss is from the full mount to a gigantic heavyweight Samoan in the 3rd round. So, not much to take away from that fight when you're comparing him to light heavyweights. And here, light heavyweight, he is a problem now. I think he's 3-0 in his last... Oh, no, he's 2-0 in his last 2. I don't even know when the Paul Craig fight was. But either way, Krylov, this is how he stays afloat. And Oezdemir, these guys are both perennial light heavyweight contenders. And now Oezdemir's down a peg. And Krylov, he's still got that razor-thin fight with Glover Teixeira, which Glover might be the champion in a few months. So, not a bad victory at all for Krylov. Not that it's going to get him a title shot, but it only moves him forward to getting to what he wants. And I thought he did it with a nice workman-like performance. On paper, this fight should have gone to a finish. It should have been a finish because Krylov is 90-something% finishes. But Volkan Oezdemir is tougher and better than I've given him credit for with his submission defense and everything overall. But still, he's not ever going to win a fight with a well-rounded performance. And that's Krylov's game, and that's what happened here. The more versatile MMA fighter got the better of him. So, solid victory. And then after that was Abubakar Nurmagomedov taking out Gachi Omogachev. This was by decision. A pretty damn close fight. Each guy was having success with takedowns, a few submission attempts. I did think Gachi would be more aggressive with submission attempts. He still worked for that knee bar now for the third fight in a row, and after getting the knee bar on Jancy Silva in the Contender Series. And on the feet, I still think Gaethje, at middleweight or welterweight, he's a sloppy striker. He really is. He that's 2 fights in a row now where he's missed a punch and fallen like the bad guy in a John Wayne movie, or Ronda Rousey against Holly Holm. But just a good close battle overall. But in the end, Abu Bakar got the better of him, and won the wrestling battle too, and slowly but steadily outpointed Gaethje. Gaethje, I wasn't sure that there was a high ceiling for this fight, the winner, and I'm still not. But these guys are both skilled with very good records, and whatever. I hope to both see him hang around the bottom of the welterweight division now. And then Armen Petrosyan takes out AJ Dobson. Fight was pretty close. 30-27, I thought Petrosyan, but still closer than it looked, especially round 1. I did think AJ Dobson was fighting very well, but Petrosyan was just a better striker, and I did think he outpointed Dobson round 1. I did think Dobson should have worked wrestling more, but, to be honest, it doesn't seem like that's ever going to be part of his game, where he's able to consistently take someone down. And, that's what he needed to do in this Petrosyan fight. If he's seen Petrosyan lose, that's what he needed to do. And especially with his background and training with Coleman and whatever. Like I said, he's trending towards being Chuck Liddell, but he's still early in his career, where if he was going to use his wrestling offensively, now was the time, and this was the opponent. And he didn't even really try so. He kind of did in round 1 and was shaken off a little bit, and then I think he was just too discouraged. And that only freed Petrosyan up. Petrosyan, once he realized, it's a striking battle, he just started doubling up nearly on Dobson. At least that's what it seemed like by round 3. And the volume gap started growing as the fight went on. And, Dobson wasn't really hurt. It was still a close fight, but I didn't, I was asking for him to just fight harder, go for it, try something, whatever, because I thought the fight still was within reach, assuming he won round 1, which he didn't. But in the end, he didn't win round 1, and he didn't try to win round 3. Not like he should have. So Petrosyan wins. Can't fault him for fighting like that. He fought great, but I do think Dobson needs to sharpen up his wrestling. I think he needs to make himself a more viable threat in the UFC. And then next up was... Who the fuck was next? Mokaev. Muhammad Mokaev had a battle with Malcolm Gordon. I did think he was going to win in round 1. I thought Gordon's chin would fail him, so I bet on the under, which was under round and a half. It didn't pan out, but Mokaev still got a great finish in round 3. Just a beautiful armbar. Overall, a very good performance from Mokaev, especially because he was put in some precarious situations. I did think, Malcolm Gordon had his back at the end of round 2, and it looked like he sunk in a full rear naked choke almost instantly. And I still don't know how to process that. I do think Mokaev kind of just gave up because he knew he heard the 10-second bell, then got reversed and said, all right, what's this guy going to submit me in 4 seconds? So he kind of just let it go. But still, it wasn't a great look, and it was something, that's all I'm looking for with a guy like Mokaev, his holes in his game, just what he's got going on. And he did deal with more grappling in round 3 from Malcolm Gordon, which Paul Felder called greatly. He said, Malcolm should go with the body triangle, secure control. He didn't, and wasn't long before Mokaev was out of there. And Mokaev, look, nothing was working for him, and then he locked up the armbar. And, you can't deny an armbar. You can't deny your arm about to break. That's it. I always go back to Stephan Bonnar versus Mike Swick in the semifinals of The Ultimate Fighter Season 1. And Bonnar has Swick, who's a much smaller guy, in a triangle choke. But Swick is fighting, and Bonnar switches to an armbar, and he taps instantly. Of course, Bonnar's legs are as big as Swick's torso, so he definitely had his arm in danger. But Mokaev had Malcolm Gordon's arm in danger. That thing was locked so tightly, and what was there, like a minute left? It wasn't long, and he tapped out. But still, Mokaev was on his way to winning, and it's just the perfect way for him to win there, getting, in a battle, getting a nice third round armbar. It's cool to see he, carries his finishing skills late at the UFC level. And Malcolm Gordon, speaking of UFC level, he is now 2-3, but one win's an injury. The other one's over Francisco Figueiredo. I do think he'll be kept around the UFC, but he's definitely near the bottom of the barrel, I'd say. But great win for Mokaev. I don't know about finding Brandon Royale. Like I talked about, Malcolm Gordon taking his back, making him pay. Brandon Royval is an opportunist, and he is a dangerous flyweight. One of the most dangerous. So, maybe too early for him, in my opinion. But still, I'd love to see it, because one thing he's got on Royval is wrestling, and he seems to love to throw down, and Royval is just pure chaos. All right, and then the first fight of the night was Lena Landsberg. Lena Landsberg taking on Karol Rosa. Karol Rosa steadily outworked Lena Landsberg. She was dropped very early, but immediately got back up, and there was speculation on who won the round. I thought Karol Rosa won every round, really outworking Lena Landsberg, out-wrestling her. She out-wrestled her pretty cleanly, and Lena just, she's 40 years old, she's too slow, she's powerful, but she's just, this was a bad matchup for her. Karol Rosa's a hustler. Karol Rosa did illegally knee her. I think she illegally kneed her and lost a point, which, I'm trying to remember which was which. The knee was down, whatever. There was another illegal knee. But, yeah, she did drop a point there, which made it a closer fight, of course, on paper, but the story of the fight was Karol Rosa's better, and that's what happened. She just outworked Lena Landsberg. Lena Landsberg couldn't get going. She dropped her again early, but that was it. That was the end of her offense for the 3-round fight. And then after that, her best moment was taking an illegal knee. Karol Rosa, now 4-5-1 in the UFC. The one loss to the one distinct wrestler, the big wrestling problem in the division, Sarah McMahon. So I have high hopes for Karol Rosa. I really do. And I wanted to see her get a finish here, and I thought she could have. But Lena Landsberg is very goddamn tough. I know she had 6 losses, 3 of them via TKO, but and on the ground to whoever, Aspen Ladd. But Lena Landsberg is very tough, as we've seen in her other fights, and this was just another example of that. All right, so that's the recap, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I loved that whole event. Can't wait to watch it again before I go back to work when they drag me back there. But I will be back in another 2 days to talk about UFC, Fight Night, whatever the fuck. Whoever versus whoever. Kattar versus Emmett. All right, so I'll see you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Like, share, subscribe.